Welcome back. Joining me on the set now, I have Willa Starks, and Willa is a psychiatric counselor here in the city of Fort Wayne. And we're going to talk about some of the things going on with teenagers. We hear so much about teenagers and things nowadays, but all things happen for a reason. And what we're going to try to do is to talk a little bit about some of the things going on with teenagers and try to get a little idea of what's happening in their environment. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out to come onto the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Before we get into our basic topic of discussion, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
I am a psychiatric social worker or a clinical social worker. I've been in the field for about 11 years. Some people may remember me from Park Center. I was there about 10 years, but I am now at Lindenview. Lindenview is a joint venture between Parkview Memorial Hospital and St. Joe Hospital, where discrete services are going to be offered between those two institutions together. So that's basically what I've done. I've been a clinical counselor, a psychiatric counselor. I've done a great deal of consulting work and provided a number of presentations, a lot of public speaking and seminars relative to issues in mental health.
Okay. How long have you been in this field?
About 11 years. I've been in Fort Wayne ever since I completed my graduate work at Atlanta University and accepted my first position here.
Okay. That's a different field. What led you to that? I mean, where did the interest come from psychiatric social work?
It's very interesting. I was originally, my first profession was that of a teacher. I taught English and speech in the public schools of Dallas, Texas. I had mostly 11th and 12th grade students. And the district, probably the 4th or 5th year that I worked for them, started to look at multifaceted components of children's behavior. They wanted to do something in terms of helping administrators and teachers understand the psychological components of students' behavior. They started to look at what goes on with kids inside and how that's related to what goes on outside. And as I started to be a part of that program, I found it very interesting. And on my vacations home, I was saying to my brother, who was already a psychiatric social worker, that I was very fascinated by this. And over vacations and summer, we had different conversations. And eventually he said, have you ever considered becoming a clinical social worker? And I had not. But what I was saying to him is, this is so interesting. I think I'd rather do this full-time than to teach English and speech. And basically, that's how it evolved.
You got into it. Okay. It's an interesting field, and like we were talking before, you deal with a lot of different people, a lot of different age groups and whatnot. But one thing I think we wanted to focus in on were teenagers and I guess what 13 to 18, 13 to 17 or whatever, and some of that psychological behavior, some of the reasons and things that we see and hear today. Let's forget sex and drugs for a minute. Assess today's teenager.
That's a very big question. Assess today's teenager. I don't know if I can provide an accurate assessment, because when you talk about teenagers, teenagers are just like us in the sense that there are so many varieties, there are so many kinds, there's so many personalities, there's so many interests, there's so many proclivities. That would be very hard to do. If you were to say what are some of the issues that teenagers, almost any teenager, is having to deal with, I would say peer pressure. The teen years can be, on the one hand, very exciting because part of the task of being a teenager is to establish your own self-identity, but you're doing that within the context of the family still, and you are pulling away from the family at the same time. You're growing up, but to do that effectively, you need to be anchored with family values, family mores. You need people to back you up, to support, and to guide you while you go out a little further on your own in terms of making more and greater decisions that are going to affect your life. So that push-pull kind of situation is what sets families up sometimes for some of their most tumultuous years.
Right.
And I don't mean to make it all negative, because I think parents can begin to take a great deal of pride as they see the teenager moving out, moving ahead, and making the kinds of decisions that they feel good about.
Okay. But that's the thing,
But
too. Parents have a hard time letting go of that.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like we teach them to be independent, grow up, you know,
That's
do
true.
your own thing, and then the minute they start doing it, then we go, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Let me finish what I started to say earlier. Peer pressure, coping with the family sometimes is a difficult situation because of the very thing that you just mentioned. While the teenager is going through ages and stages of growth and development, so are the parents. Ages and stages of their growth and development. And I feel like all of us spend our whole lives growing up in the sense of becoming the fullest human being that we could be, in the sense of exercising our greatest potential. So peer pressure is important, but the family situation, 50% of kids today may be in a single-parent home, which is not in and of itself a bad situation, but it sometimes makes for a difficult connection between the parent and teen, simply because time may not be available. If you have one parent who may be working a full-time job, sometimes a part-time job, in addition to that, there may be more than one child in the family. The issue of just finding time, that can be a difficulty. Moving into high school and no longer being in one classroom all day and having a whole series of teachers with a whole series of personalities and a whole list of courses that you must learn and accommodate yourself to, in terms of meeting the demands of not just one teacher but 4 or 5 or 6 different teachers, can be part of it. Not to mention the fact that your body is going through the greatest change hormonally and every other kind of way that it will ever go through again. So it can be a difficult time to master all of these things, and all of them are going on at basically the same time. So
the thing about it to me is that those things happen, and we as people are aware that teenagers are going through that, because we all go through it too. But yet we seem to still kind of not be able to handle it. You know, it's like these kids are this or these kids are that, and that's not, like I say, it's not really fair, is it?
well, I think...
I mean, there are some bad ones, we know that, but I'm saying it's not really fair to label them.
Well, yeah, we try not to do that, because once you put a label on something, the label can get in the way of dealing with the real issue. If, for instance, if a kid feels like they're not very good at it, they wouldn't feel like that. They'd say they're dumb in a given area. That becomes all-inclusive and a global kind of labeling. And what we find is that, again, the same with adults. We may not be good at a particular thing. So rather than say you're dumb, we tried to put it in some kind of context. You are not as good at math as you would like to be, but you are very strong in English, geography, whatever. So we try to stay away from global labeling, but it does happen because, and I think it comes out of our work with children during the very early years. We teach them many rules as younger children, as toddlers. And the rules are there to keep them safe because their knowledge of the world is not very great and their experience is nil. And so we teach them rules, and we communicate in shorthand with them, and we say, good girl, good boy, bad girl, bad boy. We start with that, which is a kind of global labeling, but it's something that kids can catch on to pretty quickly. And so sometimes we have trouble making that shift from, you are a good person, but I do not like or appreciate the behavior that I'm seeing now, and we need to pay some attention to that. So making a distinction between the person, the quality of the person, and the behavior in and of itself is very, very important, particularly as children get older.
Okay. Well, we're going to stop right here at this particular show, but I know in our next show we're going to continue this discussion and talk a little bit more about that. We want to thank you for taking this time out.